79% of American millionaires never inherited a single dollar. Sit with that number for a second because it quietly destroys the story most people carry around. The story that says wealth is luck or timing or a name you were born into. Nearly 8 out of 10 people with a seven-figure net worth built it from a middle-income start or lower. They were not handed power. They took it. And 500 years ago, a man in exile wrote down exactly how power gets taken. His name was Machiavelli. He was a Florentine diplomat who lost everything when the Medici family came back to power in 1512. Dismissed, imprisoned, tortured, and sent away to a farm. And out there, with nothing left, he wrote a small book called The Prince. It was so honest about how power actually works that his name became an insult. To call someone Machiavellian is to call them cold, scheming, ruthless. But that is the caricature, not the man. Read what he actually wrote, and you find something closer to a survival manual. A clear-eyed guide to holding on to something valuable in a world that is constantly trying to take it from you. And here is the part nobody tells you. Everything he said about holding on to power maps almost perfectly onto holding on to money. So today we are going to do something a little different. We are going to take 7 of Machiavelli's real principles, the ones he actually wrote, quoted correctly, and we are going to pair each one with a hard financial number. Not motivation, not quotes off a poster. The real math behind why the quietly wealthy behave the way they do. Because Machiavelli was right about power. And it turns out he was right about your money too. Let me clear up the biggest misunderstanding first, because it sets up everything else. The most famous line from The Prince is that it is better to be feared than loved. People stop reading right there and assume the whole book is about being cruel. But that is not what he wrote. The full sentence is that it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. His actual advice was to be both, loved and feared together. He only chose fear as the fallback, and only because fear is more reliable than affection when things get hard. Now translate that to money. Most people have a relationship with their finances built entirely on love, on feeling good. They buy the thing that feels nice today. They avoid the budget because looking at it feels bad. They chase the warm feeling and flee the uncomfortable one, and it leaves them broke. The quietly wealthy do the opposite. They respect their money the way Machiavelli respected power, with a little healthy fear. Fear of the emergency they have not prepared for. Fear of the debt compounding against them. That respect, that discipline is what actually keeps them safe. So let us walk through the 7 rules. Rule 1. Build the fortress before you need it. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is the arbiter of 1/2 of our actions, but that she leaves the other half to be governed by us. Half is luck, half is you. And the prince who survives is the one who fortifies during peacetime, so that when fortune turns, and it always turns, the walls are already standing. Here is the number that should stop you cold. According to the Federal Reserve's 2024 report on household finances, 37% of Americans could not cover a $400 emergency with cash. More than 1 in 3. And only about 55% have even 3 months of expenses saved. So when the car breaks, or the job ends, or the medical bill lands, most people have no fortress at all. They are relying entirely on the half that is luck. The wealthy build the walls first. Boring, unglamorous, 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting in a savings account doing nothing exciting. That is the fortress. Build it before the siege, and think about what that fortress actually buys you. It is not really about the $400. It is about what having the fortress lets you do. When you have 6 months of expenses saved, you can walk away from a bad job. You can say no to a client who disrespects you. You can wait out a market crash instead of selling at the bottom to pay rent. Machiavelli understood that a fortified prince negotiates from strength, and a desperate one takes whatever terms he is offered. Your emergency fund is not a pile of cash. It is leverage. It is the freedom to make every other decision from a position of power instead of panic. Rule 2. Be the fox and the lion. In Chapter 18, Machiavelli says the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. So you must be a fox to recognize the traps and a lion to frighten off the wolves. You need both natures, cunning and strength. With money, the wolves and the traps are usually the same thing, your own emotions. And there is a number that measures exactly how much they cost you. Morningstar tracks something called the behavior gap. It compares what investors actually earn against what their own funds returned. And in their 2024 study, investors earned about 6.3% a year, while the funds they held returned 7.3%. That 1 percentage point gap does not come from bad funds. It comes from bad timing, from buying when everyone is greedy and selling when everyone is scared. Over a decade, that is roughly 15% of your total return gone because the fox did not see the trap and the lion panicked. The wealthy investor is calm on purpose. He recognizes the emotional trap and he has the strength not to run. Rule 3. Master one boring weapon. Machiavelli was blunt about focus. He wrote that a prince should have no other aim or study than war and its discipline. One craft, mastered completely, and he said you should study it even harder in peacetime than in war. For your money, the boring weapon is the low-cost index fund, and the data here is almost unfair. S&P Global runs a scorecard every year comparing professional fund managers against the plain index. Over 15 years, roughly 9 out of 10 active managers, the highly paid experts, failed to beat the simple index. 9 out of 10. So while everyone else is chasing the exciting new stock, the hot tip, the crypto their cousin mentioned, the quietly wealthy person has picked one boring weapon and mastered it. They are not smarter. They are more focused. They study the one thing that works and they ignore the noise that does not. Rule 4. Never confuse looking powerful with being powerful. This might be the most Machiavellian idea of all. He wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, but few truly know what you are. Appearances rule the crowd, but the prince who believes his own image is the one who gets overthrown. Now here is the number that exposes the whole game. Nearly 48% of Americans earning over $100,000 a year say they live paycheck to paycheck. Six-figure incomes, and almost half of them are one missed check from trouble. Why? Because they spent the money looking rich. The new car, the bigger house, the watch, the appearances, they confused the costume for the crown. The quietly wealthy understand the difference completely. They let people see whatever they want to see, and underneath, quietly, they are building the real thing. Looking rich is a cost. Being rich is a balance sheet. They are not the same, and often they are opposites. So here is a question I genuinely want you to answer in the comments. Which of these 7 rules is the one you already break? Be honest. Is it the fortress you never built, or the boring weapon you keep ignoring for something more exciting? Tell me, because the one you resist is usually the one you need most. Rule 5. Act now, because delay is the most expensive decision there is. I am not going to hang this one on a quote, because the internet loves to put fake Machiavelli lines on this idea, and we do not do fake numbers here. So let me just show you the math, and it is brutal. Say you invest $200 a month starting at age 25, and you earn a 7% average return. By 65, you have around $525,000. Now take your twin, who waits just 10 years and starts at 35. Same $200 a month, same 7%. Your twin ends up with about $244,000. That 10-year delay cost your twin over $280,000, even though they only saved $24,000 less along the way. But here is the version that really lands. Imagine you invest for only 10 years, from 25 to 35, and then you stop completely. You never add another dollar. You still end up with more money at 65 than the person who invested faithfully for 30 straight years starting at 35. 10 years of early action beats 30 years of late action. Machiavelli did not need a spreadsheet to know that hesitation is fatal. Time is the one advantage you cannot buy back later. Rule 6. Govern your half and never flee the field. Back to that line about fortune governing one half and you governing the other. The mistake most people make is that when fortune turns against them, when the market drops, they abandon the half they actually control. They sell. They run. And the numbers say running is the single most expensive thing you can do. J.P. Morgan's research on the market shows that if you had stayed fully invested over a 20-year period, you did fine. But if you missed just the 10 best days in that entire 20 years, your total return was roughly cut in half. Cut in half from missing 10 days. And here is the cruel twist. About 7 of those 10 best days happened within 2 weeks of the 10 worst days. So the people who panic and sell during the crash are almost guaranteed to miss the recovery that follows days later. Fortune governs half. But the half you govern, your own behavior, is where the entire war is won or lost. The prince holds the field. Rule 7. Make knowledge your one true study. Machiavelli said the prince should study his craft even in peacetime, when there is no war, so that he is ready when war comes. Constant, quiet, unglamorous study. And this is where most people simply opt out. The TIA Institute runs an annual financial literacy index, and year after year, American adults answer only about half of basic money questions correctly. Half. Questions about interest, inflation, risk, the fundamentals of how money grows, and it has never climbed much above that in over a decade. So the people who quietly get wealthy are not geniuses. They just refuse to be in the half that never learned the rules. They read one book. They understood compound interest. They learned what a fund actually is. Small, boring, deliberate study in peacetime before they needed it. Now let me widen the lens because this is bigger than 7 rules. Notice what every one of these has in common. Machiavelli was never really writing about cruelty. He was writing about seeing clearly, about refusing the comforting story and looking at how things actually work. The feared versus loved rule is really about discipline over feelings. The fox and the lion is about controlling your own emotions. The fortress, the boring weapon, the early action, holding the field, the constant study. Every single one is the same move. Stop reacting to how money feels and start responding to how money works. That is the real reason the quietly wealthy seem so calm. It is not that they have more. It is that they stopped being ruled by the story and started governing the reality. And the same principle scales to everything. The debt you carry, and the average credit card charges over 20% now, on a national balance that just crossed $18 trillion, is money you let turn against you. The image you buy is a tax you pay to strangers who are not thinking about you at all. It is all one lesson, wearing 7 different costumes. So here is where we land. Machiavelli was never really the villain history made him out to be. The man in exile who lost everything was not teaching people to be cruel. He was teaching people to stop being naive about power. And money is just power in its most everyday form. The fear you feel looking at your finances was never really the enemy. That fear, turned into discipline, is the fortress. The only thing standing between most people and real wealth was the belief that they needed luck, or a rich family, or a secret to build it. You don't. You never did. And now you know the math. If this changed how you think about one thing you have been telling yourself you cannot control, there are a lot more of these, the real math behind the life you actually want. Subscribe, and let's keep decoding it together.